So I know I was with Austria. So the Austrian Empire, run by the Habsburgs, they're already on the decline. They've taken over a lot of different nationalities, and that's their problem with uniting them. And remember, this is part of the reason why we're going to have World War I, is that some of these nationalities, they don't want to be controlled by Austrians. They want their own country. And so they're going to have that issue. And then we get the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, who's the heir to the Austrian Empire. And that is done by a Serbian nationalist. So the government relies upon imperial decrees. They have a parliament, but they don't listen to it. And so what you see is a government that's really more of an authoritarian, more of a monarchy than a real legislative government. So the Russians, they're going to have westernization versus Slavophile. So what's going to start happening in Russia is you're going to start seeing anarchists, and anarchists are people who want to see the destruction, the overthrow of the government. They're the ones who assassinated Alexander II. And in 1881, remember, he's kind of the guy who's trying to do some reforms in Russia. And Alexander III, his son, is going to come into the throne, and he's there for not really that long. You look at 13 years. And then Nicholas II, Tsar Nicholas II, he'll be the last of the Romanovs. And they're autocrats. They're basically dictators. They're monarchs with absolute power. There's a lot of industrialization that does start in Russia, and it's rapid. It occurs after 1900. And you're seeing that Russia is becoming very poor as far as the lower class. Like, the lower class is still, they just don't have very much. And when you look at Russia, they are going to start having socialist parties developing. And anytime you get this gap of wealth between the rich and the poor, whenever the gap gets too big, that's kind of when you start seeing revolutions and revolutionary ideology spreading. And so the socialist parties are going to start, and you're going to start seeing Marxist social democrats. And the government's going to fear them because the government's not stupid. If you've got socialist revolutionaries, if you've got Marxists who called for an overthrow of the government, you probably should go ahead and run them underground. And so that's what Tsar Nicholas is going to do. He's going to run these parties under the ground. And so the ones who are really dangerous, like Trotsky, they're going to be run out of Russia altogether. So you're going to see Russia lose to Japan. They're going to lose in 1905 in the Russo-Japanese War. And it's going to lead to the creation of the Duma, which is just a legislative assembly. So it's kind of it's a parliament, it's that, but it's really weak. So the Tsar has it, but it's really just a puppet. It's for show. It makes the people, the peasants, think that they have something when they don't have anything at all. But it looks good. I mean, it gives the pretense that you're not an autocrat when you still are. You're going to start seeing international rivalry and the winds of war. So there's no major European wars between 1871 and 1914. And that means that these countries are kind of laying in wait. They're starting to build up a lot of weapons. So there's this big sense of militarism. So they might not be publicly doing this stuff. They might not be saying, France, we, the British people, we're going to make 100 more battleships. They're not going to do that, but they are building up. I mean, like, the tension's there. There's a series of crises that could have led the war. It's there, and they are building up, and they're not stupid. They're all in the same area. So Otto von Bismarck of Germany, he's going to pursue this balance of power, this alliance system. And he is doing this kind of against France. So Bismarck would like to see a balancing of power, alliances, entangling alliances in Europe. So Wilhelm II is going to wage a pretty active foreign policy after 1890. He's going to stop his treaty with Russia. He's not going to want to be in an alliance anymore with Russia, who's to his east. He's going to actually be in favor of Austria, who's to his west. And Austria is really very close to France, neighbors, right? And Russia is now going to ally itself with France because France isn't stupid. if Germany is in an alliance with Austria, they better start looking for some allies as well. And allies, you can be a military ally, you can be an ally economically, but these are aggressive foreign policy, I'll attack, kill you kind of alliances. And by 1914, you basically have two opposing camps, two main alliance systems developing. You have the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, and Italy, and you have the Triple Entente, and this is France, Russia, and Great Britain. And yes, no, Great Britain and France don't like each other, but they really don't like Germany, so they'll ally themselves always. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Italy, by World War I, they will actually leave this alliance system and they'll join down here, and they'll join later in World War I. So you do have two main alliance systems developing in Europe, and really it's this balancing of power. So the Ottoman Empire and nationalism in the Balkans. So the Ottoman Empire, like Austria, they got a lot of nationalistic problems too because they'd taken over a lot of different places. And pretty much where they have their biggest problem is in the Eastern European area in the Balkans. They have a complicated relationship with Russia and Austria because Russia and Austria are trying to pretty much take over the Balkan areas. So the Ottomans are in tensions all the time with the Russians and the Austrians. And during the 19th century, you're going to see Greece, Romania, and Serbia gaining their independence. So these nationalistic groups, they're going to get their countries freed from the Ottoman Turks. Bulgaria is also going to achieve its autonomy under Russia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina are also going to achieve their autonomy under Austria. So you're starting to see these Balkan areas gaining independence. There is going to be a crisis in the Balkan area, 1908 to 1913. It's a flashpoint. Austria is going to annex the Slavic-speaking area of Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1908. And the people of Serbia are outraged. So the Slavic Serbians are outraged. They wanted a larger Serbia. So Serbia had really been planning on taking these areas because they speak the language. So they should want to be a part of Serbia. That's kind of how people looked at it back then. It's like there's a common heritage, a common culture, a common language. They felt like they should be able to have you in their nation. And so they wanted a larger Serbia. So they had eyed Bosnia and Herzegovina. Russia's going to side with the Serbians, but they're forced to back down. So even though Russia is going to side with the Serbians here, they'll do it again in 1914. So in 1914, when a Serb kills the heir to Austria, the Russians will side with the Serbs, and World War I is on. There's going to be two local Balkan wars in 1912 to 1913. So you're going to have some local people fighting each other. And by 1914, Serbian ambitions are going to be very frustrated. The Austrians are convinced that Serbia is a threat to its multinational, its multi-ethnic empire, and Russia is not going to retreat again. So this is setting up a very good groundwork for World War I to start, and it really does start in the Eastern European areas. So towards the modern consciousness, intellectual and cultural development. So before 1914, science and reason, they seem to guarantee inevitable progress. You know, like we're moving forward, and we're moving forward very quickly. So you're going to get physics, new physics. Newton's mechanical conception of the universe is going to be questioned, and it's going to be questioned by the Curies. So you're going to start seeing radium. It's going to be developed, and they're going to understand atoms. And so what you're starting to see is science is getting a little bit more advanced. You're getting Planck. You're getting packets of energy. Einstein is out at this time period, and he comes up with the theory of relativity. Time and space are not absolute, but they're relative to the observer. He comes up with a four-dimensional space-time continuum. Neither space nor time was independent of human existence. A lot of this physics stuff a lot of the science centers in the world during this time period will be in Vienna, Austria. And Sigmund Freud is going to come up. He's a psychologist. He's going to come up with psychoanalysis, which is a school in psychology, and it's studying the unconscious mind, and they focus on childhood and trauma in your childhood. And so Freud is going to become like a pop culture figure among everyone. Like Hollywood even lets the guy look at Hollywood scripts to see if, they're getting into the human mind and if they're portraying love right. So he comes out with an interpretation of dreams, and he has it published in 1900 on purpose. It was published actually in 1899, but Freud wants it published in 1900 as far as the year goes because he believes it's ushering in a new era. Freud loves himself. And so the unconscious, the hidden mind, and he's going to look at why we do the things we do. And he looks at irrational human behavior, and he looks at our anxieties and all our problems, and he comes up with this theory of repression, that if you have had a horrible, tragic thing happen to you, that your mind will forget it. It'll push it down into the unconscious, and you won't remember it until something happens to trigger that memory. So psychoanalysis could recover the memory, and they did it through dream interpretation, and they did it through talking to the patient. So they would let the patient talk about anything that they wanted, and within that talk, free association, there's like symbols, and those symbols mean something. Oops, and that's why you probably shouldn't have your cell phone on when you do videos. Hold just 1 second. Alright, sorry. So social Darwinism and racism. So Darwin's theory of evolution is going to come out during this time period. And when the theory comes out, there's going to be people who take this theory and they're going to apply it to like the business world, because survival of the fittest sounds like capitalism. And so people who are business owners, they're going to take this and they're going to apply it to the business world. Andrew Carnegie, Rockefeller, these guys are believers in social Darwinism. They believe that they own the factories, that they own and operate them because they're smarter, harder, better people. And the people who work in their factories are not. They're not the fittest, okay? So when they look at social Darwinism, when we start looking at racism, you're going to start seeing nations starting to compete militarily and in other ways to show that they are the superior race. And I know you've heard that before because you've heard of Hitler, and you've heard of Germany, Nazi Germany. This is actually most of the world, most European countries and the United States actually believe in this philosophy. So social Darwinism is just trying to show that your group is the better group. And German racism, the Aryan race is going to be seen as the better race. And the same thing with the Anglo-Saxons, so the white people of like Britain and the United States will feel the same way. There's going to be an anti-Semitic history, so it's got a long history. It's not just in Germany, it's in a lot of countries during this time period. It still is. So as a consequence of the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, Jews are going to gain legal equality, and many are going to assimilate into the general culture, so they blend in. Okay, assimilate means they become similar. Okay, so they become similar. That doesn't mean they're 100% the same. Similar means it looks kind of the same, but you aren't the same, and that's kind of how Jews will get treated. So they'll gain equality, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be treated all the time as equals. And so nationalism and social Darwinism is going to increase, and it's going to increase anti-Semitism in the 1880s and on. The Zionist movement is really a reaction to the anti-Semitic sentiment going on in Europe and really everywhere. And so the Zionist movement is a movement to get back to Palestine, the promised land between the Jewish people and their God. And so they want to get back to Palestine, but Palestine at the moment was being controlled by the Ottoman Empire, by the Muslim Turks, and it had been controlled for a long, long time. The Jewish people had not been in control of Palestine in over 1,000 years. It had not been theirs. It had been conqueror's land. And so they're going to try, the Zionist movement is going to try and get back to Palestine and take control of the area.